folks. It is Westy here, your director of theater, with yet another video. This one, for our month of Disney theming, is actually going to be about voice acting. Yes, the classic that we see in all those cartoons, like my Nightmare Before Christmas poster that keeps popping up behind my ear there. How exactly is it that these people in these cartoons do all of this voice acting? And let me tell you, it is not some secret magical skill that you have to be born with. It is actually something that anyone can learn if they're willing to put a little effort into it. So today is going to be a bit more of an interactive video, and I am going to invite you all to participate along with me in some fun exercises and activities. So let's start off with the big question. What exactly is voice acting, and how is it different from acting, say, on a stage? Well, when we are doing voice acting, we have to act and show emotion without use of our body. All of the emotion needs to be conveyed in our voice. We use our voice and the sounds that we can make to represent a character, all of the emotions they're feeling, the information we're trying to get across. All of that needs to come through clearly in what we're saying. It's really important when voice acting that we try to articulate clearly and that we play with our pitch, speed, nasality, intonation, inflection, all of that stuff in order to convey both the emotions and the character itself. So how on earth do we do all of that? First and foremost, the thing that you really need is to learn how to be aware of your own self, your body, and your voice. Recordings are particularly useful for this. If you listen back to a recording of yourself, it lets you listen to how you sound, listen to how you use your voice, and become aware of all of the things that you like that you're doing, and that maybe you don't like so much and want to work on for next time. The more we listen to ourselves speak, the more aware we can become of our voice. As we're talking about being aware of our voice, we don't only want to become aware of how it sounds, but also how it feels and what part of our body we're using to make our voice. For just a second, I want you to just hum, just a and as you hum, feel your throat, feel your cheeks and your nose. Put your hand in front of your mouth and see where the air comes out. Feel the path that the air takes to get from in your chest, in your stomach, past your vocal cords, and out to produce the sound. As you hum, move it around in your mouth. Change the pitch, change the volume. Feel how that changes what it feels like in those muscles, in the air, how much comes out your nose versus out of your mouth. Just play with it for a few seconds. Just play with if you have your lips open and you're not humming anymore, you're making an E sound. How does the sound change when you move your lips? E. As we become aware of how our body changes our sound and our voice, it becomes much more easy to work with the result and adapt it into a variety of different voices, accents, whatever it is that you're trying to do to convey the character and the emotion in whatever piece you are voice acting for. Another interesting thing to note is even when I'm doing videos like this is a kind of voice acting. I'm playing the role of an educator, I'm informing you, and I'm using my voice for this as well. If I were to talk without enunciating, without articulating myself clearly, you would not be able to understand what it is that I was saying. If I mumble like this, we're not really going to catch anything. So you need to be able to avoid things like mumbling or talking too fast or talking too loud or too soft. All of those things, which is voice acting, play not only into actual acting roles, but also presenting or just talking to people and all of those things as well. So when we decide we're going to try to work on our voice, how do we start? The very first most important thing to do when we start becoming aware of our voice and start working on voice acting is to start with a warm-up. Even before I do these videos, I do a short vocal warm-up to make sure that my voice is ready and I'm not going to get too many weird sounds or voice cracks or anything like that, and to make sure I'm relaxed. So start first and foremost with your posture. In order to speak clearly and articulate well and use our voice to the best of our ability, we have to have a proper posture. Now, this is true of most acting, and I hope you've been doing it in your acting already, but it's particularly important and something that's easy to forget about when we're trying to voice act. So make sure your shoulders are back and square, your head and neck, they all sit on top of each other. You're not leaning forward or leaning back or anything like that. Everything's straight and put on top of each other. And it lets us be able to breathe. So that's another very important thing to work on while warming up and while doing your voices, is to make sure you have control of your breathing. So just breathe with me for a few moments. Just gentle and slow. In through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe, you want it to come in through your nose and all the way down into your diaphragm, the section down just under where your ribs end, about a hand's width above your belly button, that area right there. You want to bring your breath all the way down to fill your lungs as much as possible. One of the things that's very easy to do, especially if you're nervous about a presentation or a voice acting role or something like that, is to forget to breathe. This breathing, bringing as much air as possible into your lungs, is what's going to allow you to pronounce things clearly, to articulate, to use different voices, to play with your pitch and your intonation. It's the same sort of thing that helps you when you're singing. In fact, a lot of voice acting can be decently closely related to singing, but at least with voice acting, we don't have to hit any specific notes. There's a reason I'm not the singing director. Anyways, another very important thing as well, in order to take care of your voice and your body and to make sure you're ready to play with voices, is to drink water. Oh my gosh, drinking water is so important. Keeping your vocal cords hydrated is so important. Seriously. You're not going to be able to talk if you haven't had something to drink. You know when you wake up in the morning and your throat's all like, bleh? Yeah, it's water. It's all about water. Hydrate or dihydrate. That's a very old meme. Yikes. Anyways, so then once we've done our breathing and we have our posture right, we're going to do other things to warm up our voice itself. So this time, as you breathe in deeply, when you breathe out, I want you to breathe out on a hum, on a mm. So breathe in as deep as you can, and then hold that for as long as you can. Keep going if you can. Play with it and see how long one breath out can take you. It's a fun little contest to do with your friends sometimes. It can result in lots of laughter and things like that. I personally have a very large lung capacity because I used to play trombone and I was on a swim team and things like that. So I grew up doing things that required me to take a lot of air into my lungs. So I definitely have a slight advantage in that, but lung capacity and how much air you can hold is something that's worth working on for all kinds of acting, but voice acting in particular. So breathe out and once more. And this time opening it up to an ah. So ma. This time breathe out on a s. And this time on a sh. And on the vocalized version of those sounds, z. Now, as we make that buzzing zzz sound, I want you to move it around and massage your face, massage your throat, all of these things while making that zzz sound. You're going to feel it vibrating inside of everything. That's a good thing. It's opening up all of the resonators and making it so that your voice will be able to come out clear and effective. Now do the same thing, but on an ah, and open and close your mouth and feel that ah as you massage your jaw and try to relax everything. I'm going to have a fun time watching back this video. And most of the time when you do these kinds of exercises, you're either on your own or everyone has their eyes closed, so you don't have to look at each other while doing it. Okay, so now comes the all-important thing to add to the relaxation, because if you are not relaxed, you cannot use your voice. And the easiest way to relax your jaw, your throat, everything to do with your voice is to yawn. So just take a deep breath in and then yawn, just a big, loud, sighing yawn. Just this will probably trigger a few actual yawns. It usually does. It's just a really good way to open up the back of your throat and make sure everything in there is all relaxed. And you notice that as I do it, I stretch my face in weird directions. I make it as small as I can. I open it as wide as I can. These sorts of things just ensure that all of the muscles that are involved in making your voice work are ready to do their work. Now, a part of warm-up that helps you with pronunciation, enunciation, articulation. For those of you who may not know, articulation is the act of speaking clearly. It's what we do with our body to produce clear and understandable sounds. Pronunciation is how we pronounce words, how we say the sounds. And enunciation is physically how we form those sounds and making sure that we hit all of the particular sounds that are needed in order to be understood. So, for example, if I'm going to try to enunciate something clearly, I'm going to hit all of the consonants very hard so that you actually hear all of the specific consonants. When people over-enunciate, it doesn't sound natural at all, but a certain amount of enunciation is needed in order to be able to understand what someone is saying. One of the things that's common in modern speech, especially in Canada, is to drop some of the ending consonants off of words. It's how you end up with words that sound like, for example, and. A lot of people end up just saying and. We don't hit that D. And when we are speaking clearly in presentations or in voice acting roles, it's very important that we do actually hit all of those consonant sounds so that it's clear what we're saying and anyone from anywhere in the world can understand us. So, exercises to work with pronunciation, enunciation, articulation. It's tongue twister time, baby. A very, very common one used in theater that you've probably heard before is red leather, yellow leather. Saying it over and over really helps with the enunciation of those sounds. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Trying to say it as fast as you can. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. I have a speech impediment. Trust me, it is not easy for me to do this. It has taken a lot of work to get to the point where I'm at. Another one that is helpful for enunciation is the tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. The tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. The tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. The tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. Trying to say it, trying to hit all of those consonants and saying it over and over as fast as you may, and that sort of thing. Another one, which is actually very long and I can never remember the whole thing, is I want a proper cup of coffee from my proper copper coffee pot. I want a proper cup of coffee from my proper copper coffee pot. Technically, there's a whole bunch more lines to this tongue twister, but that first one is the important one. I want a proper cup of coffee from my proper copper coffee pot. Saying it fast, it's very easy to get messed up on it. I want a proper cup of coffee from my proper copper coffee pot. Pause the video and say that several times fast and see how you fare. It is a very difficult one, definitely a very fun one. One that's a personal challenge for me with my particular brand of speech impediment is she sells seashells by the seashore. The classic. Again, doing all of these little tongue twisters as part of our warm-up helps ready our voice and our brain and all of the muscles in our mouth for being able to actually pronounce these things and say them clearly. The more often we work on these tongue twisters and things, the better our articulation is going to be when we actually need to use it. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. I have such a hard time with that. When I was younger, I was literally incapable of saying it. And now I can, because I've worked on it a whole bunch. Wow. Another interesting exercise that helps you with articulation and pronunciation is actually an act of the imagination. You can also do it physically, but I don't recommend it because it's not always safe. But if you can do it safely, then do it. But you know how when we were kids, you'd do stuff like shove a bunch of marshmallows in your mouth and then try to talk? Yeah, it's like that. If you can manage to talk either with something in your mouth or while imagining that you're holding something in your mouth and still make yourself clear, that is a very good exercise for articulation. One of the common ones that you'll see people recommend is to imagine that you have a plum in the back of your mouth. If you speak like you have a plum in the back of your mouth, behind your back teeth, just stuck in there at the back, it makes you hold your mouth a lot further open. And the more open our mouth is, the more space we have for our voice to come out. An interesting thing is my nan was actually straight up taught how to speak like that. She's from the UK, from just outside of London, and when she ended up moving in with a family that was not originally her family, that there was a lot of complicated stuff with that. They wanted to change her accent, and to do that, they taught her how to speak by making her hold something in her mouth and speak clearly around it. So this is a very old technique that definitely can be very effective. Just if you're going to actually put something in your mouth, don't choke. Please do not choke on anything. Please don't put stuff in your mouth and then choke on it. I would feel incredibly guilty if I were to find out that somebody who watched this video had then proceeded to go stick a plum in their mouth and choke to death on it. So yeah, be safe. Anyways, so now that we've done a bunch of warm-up, now that we've made all of these silly sounds, now that we've yawned and touched our faces all over, what are we going to do with it? It's time to find our voices. When you're looking at playing a specific character, you need to look into what makes that character's voice, what makes the emotion of that voice. Voices for different characters are going to be wildly different. When doing a video or presentation like this, where you're playing the role of an educator, you're going to speak quite differently than, say, if you're being a radio announcer who's announcing the recent news that this happened, or if you're in the movie trailers being like, coming soon to a theater near you. They're all going to be wildly different from each other. And chances are they're going to be quite different from your regular voice, too. So again, listening to yourself in recordings, finding out where your normal voice is and where you want to change that for different roles, whether it's an educational thing like this, an announcement, playing a regular person who's just supposed to be chatting to another person, or playing a character in a cartoon or a character in a spooky haunted house type thing. Listening to your regular voice and finding where you want to change the pitch, the speed, the nasality, the intonation, the inflection. That's when you're going to be able to find the voices that you want for different roles. Certain voices are going to come easier to you. There's no shame at all in playing into that. Some people just can't make themselves sound like a small child. Some people just can't make themselves have a deep voice. That's okay. Play into your strengths, but also never stop working on the things that you want to be able to do. So when we're talking about finding a voice, the first and easiest way to do a voice that is different from your own is to play with pitch. That is how high or low our voice is. So if you start speaking and you're talking at your regular voice, you can then switch up to talk at a higher register, to talk at a higher pitch, and immediately it's different. You can also talk at a lower pitch, and immediately that's different too. You can play a little bit with how high you can push your voice and how low you can push your voice. If you feel where your voice is in your mouth, as you move it to different locations, further forward or further back, that's going to change the pitch. That's going to change how you sound. If you're having issues hearing the pitch of your voice or seeing where it's at, again, recording. But also, and here's a chance for you to participate in another little activity with me, you can play with exploring your pitch and stopping at a certain point on it and talking with that. So starting from your normal pitch, just make a sound in your mouth and slowly raise the pitch and lower the pitch with my hand. Okay, so push it as high as you can possibly go and as low as you can possibly go. Playing with this, trying to push your range further, safely of course, don't strain yourself. It helps you figure out the limits of your voice. And once you've done that a few times, you can try to take it and say from your normal level, just the you go up. You find the highest point and see if you can speak from there. I can speak up soon. It's not necessarily a very sustainable voice or the most clear one, but I can speak all the way up here at the highest pitch of my voice. So you can go all the way up there and play with that. You can choose different sections on that little scale you were doing. And I encourage you to pause the video and do this and try to speak at those different pitches and see what it sounds like. Now, you'll also notice as you play with pitch that it naturally lends into playing with the speed, the tempo of your voice. But not necessarily. It is possible to talk in a high-pitched voice and talk slow. It is possible to talk in a low voice and talk quickly. You can also play just with your regular voice, then speeding up a whole bunch and seeing what happens, or slowing down and seeing what happens from there. These things all naturally lead to voices that can be very different from your own. And an important thing to consider while doing that is variation. Even if a character does speak very quickly most of the time, they're not always going to be going at 100% speed. They're not always going to be at the very tippy top of their vocal register. There's going to be variation in the pitch and speed as a character talks and as you express different emotions. Another important thing to consider with that, especially in terms of variation, is your intonation and inflection. Inflection is what we do at the end of sentences to imply that it's a question. It's that rising pitch or a lowering pitch that happens at the end of sentences or on important words. That's the inflection. Intonation, on the other hand, is going to be, it's similar to the rhythm of how we speak. It's where we emphasize words, it's where we pause, it's where we speed up, where we slow down. It is, in a number of senses, that variation that comes with what I was mentioning earlier. So intonation, how you say the words, what speed you use, what rhythm you use. When I talk about speed, sometimes I will also use the word cadence. That is the rhythm of how you're speaking, your cadence. It varies greatly from where you're from, actually. The cadence of somebody from out in the Maritimes is very different than the cadence that people from Ontario naturally use. So that cadence is just kind of how you speak, the rhythm and the delivery of your lines. Another very interesting thing you can do when playing with voices is play with the nasality of your voice. So if I'm talking like this, I'm using my regular voice. I'm not particularly nasal. But if I start speaking like this, I'm talking more out of my nose. It becomes a more nasally voice. That's quite different from my own voice. The more we play with speaking through our nose, which comes from a tightening in the back of the mouth, that's when we're going to find other very different voices. I highly encourage you, when you want to work on different voices, to make stupid sounds. Seriously, the more we play with making silly sounds, the more easy it can be to find different voices that we're capable of. For example, for a very long time when I was younger, I thought that the only voice I was capable of doing was one that I used to do all the time in a game my younger brother and I would play, where we pretended to be superheroes and all that. There was this one invisible character named Mr. Nobody, and Mr. Nobody talks like this. It's a very strange voice, but it's one that came naturally to me, and I thought that I couldn't do any other voice because whenever I tried, it would shift into that weird voice. That's because my understanding of how to do a weird voice consisted only of nasality. I didn't think to also play with pitch, or speed, or intonation, or inflection. So the more I became aware of those things, the more I became aware of what else my voice was capable of doing. Again, it all comes back to awareness of how we sound, of how we want to sound. The more aware we are of our own voice, the better we can be at producing different voices and different sounds, the kind of thing that's very important in voice acting. So we can discover that we can go into very high voices, we can slow down into deep voices, we can do scratchy voices and be like an old woman or a witch. If you play with these different sounds and these different qualities of sounds, you can discover a wide variety of things you're capable of that you never even necessarily knew you could do. So again, remember to breathe, sit with good posture, warm up your voice, drink water, and it's all going to help you. But in the end, it all comes down to practice. Make stupid noises, record yourself, listen to yourself, change your voice, do these things, play with it, have fun. It is a game in a lot of ways. Our voice is an instrument and a tool and a game. There's so much fun you can have with it. And all of that fun is also practice. Practice, 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 as with everything. But in particular, if you want to be able to do voices, if you want to be able to sustain a voice over more than a few lines, you need to practice it. The other important thing is to always consider the safety of your vocal cords when doing this kind of thing. It's fun to push ourselves and to play with all of that. But if we aren't relaxed, if we're too tense, if we're trying too hard to do something that is out of our current range of ability, then we can really hurt our voices. There is this one voice that I do every once in a while, but I would never ever do it for a more sustained role. Because when I speak like it, like this, I can feel that it's hurting myself. So I'm never going to do more than a few lines, more than a few words in this voice, because otherwise I'm going to hurt myself. And again, knowing when you're going to hurt yourself, knowing how certain voices feel in terms of your comfort level, in terms of how well you can sustain them, that all comes from being aware of yourself, aware of your voice, and aware of how everything feels. It's easier to become aware when you practice that awareness. It is a circle. It all ties together. Be aware and practice, and trust me, you will be able to do wonderful things. Anyways, thank you for watching the video here today. I encourage you to like and subscribe so that you can see future videos from Glendon Performing Arts. It's already March, which means the semester is almost over. We have a live session next week, and I believe another live session coming up in the beginning of April. And then that'll probably be the last few times you're hearing from us this year. We'll see about trying to put out some videos over the summer as well to keep you all in the theatrical, singing, dancing spirit as well. Again, thank you for watching. If you're curious about my background or what Glendon Theatre has been up to lately, I encourage you to check out Lionheart Productions and the Fridge Festival, which will be performing on April 1st as a live premiere and then available as YouTube videos on the Glendon Theatre YouTube channel after that point. I'm the coordinator for the festival, so I'm kind of obligated to promote it, you know. I'm also in a lot of pieces, as well as directing a piece that I wrote, where you will get to hear some wonderfully talented actors doing some really cool voice acting of the spooky sort. So if you're interested in all of that, go on Facebook or Instagram, type in Lionheart Productions, Coeur de Lion, and you should be able to find information on that as well. And I'll talk to our secretary, Robin, about if she can maybe put a link in the description. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See you at our live session. Bye!